Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there was a special dinner that would be remembered for thousands of years. This wasn't just any dinner. It was the Last Supper, a meal shared between Jesus and his 12 friends, known as the disciples, on a night filled with both joy and sadness. This story begins in the bustling city of Jerusalem, where something extraordinary was about to happen. As the sun set over Jerusalem, turning the sky a lovely shade of orange, Jesus and his disciples were preparing to celebrate an important feast called the Passover. Jesus sent two of his disciples, Peter and John, on a secret mission. "Go into the city," Jesus told them, "and you will meet a man carrying a jar of water. Follow him, and he will show you a large room upstairs, all furnished and ready. Prepare for us to eat the Passover meal there." Peter and John did as Jesus asked. They followed the man with the jar, found the room, and prepared a wonderful meal with bread, wine, and other delicious foods. They were excited, wondering what Jesus would teach them that night. Later that evening, Jesus and the rest of his disciples arrived. They were all chatting and laughing, happy to be together. But Jesus had a serious look on his face. He knew this was the last meal he would share with them before something very big and very challenging would happen. Jesus looked at each of his disciples with love. He knew that each one of them had a unique story and a special place in his heart. He remembered the time he had spent with them, teaching, laughing, and sharing life's journey. As they sat down to eat, Jesus did something surprising. He took off his outer clothing, wrapped a towel around his waist, and began to wash his disciples' feet. This was usually a job for a servant, not a teacher like Jesus. "Why are you doing this, Jesus?" asked Peter, puzzled. Jesus smiled gently. "I am doing this to show you how to love and serve each other. Just as I have done for you, you should do for others." The disciples listened, amazed by Jesus' humility and kindness. They realized this was a lesson in caring for one another, no matter what. As they continued to eat, Jesus shared many things with his disciples. But then he said something that shocked them all. "One of you here will betray me," he announced, looking around the table. The disciples looked at each other, worried and confused. "Surely not I, Lord," they each asked. Jesus sadly nodded towards one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot. Judas, who felt guilty and scared, quietly left the room. The other disciples were puzzled, but Jesus just continued teaching, telling them about love, bravery, and the future. Then Jesus took a piece of bread, gave thanks to God, and broke it. "This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." He passed the bread around for everyone to eat. After that, he took a cup of wine, thanked God, and said, "This cup is the new promise made through my blood, which is poured out for you." The disciples didn't fully understand what Jesus meant, but they felt something very important was happening. They listened attentively as Jesus talked about how he would always be with them in spirit, even when he was no longer there in person. After the meal, Jesus and his disciples went to a garden called Gethsemane to pray. He prayed with such intensity. His heart was heavy with what he knew was coming. "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done," he prayed. Jesus was feeling sad and troubled. He asked his disciples to stay awake with him, but they kept falling asleep. While in the garden, soldiers, led by Judas, came to arrest Jesus. When Jesus was arrested, Peter tried to defend him, but Jesus stopped him. "Put your sword away," he said. "Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me?" Jesus was taken to the leaders of the city. They didn't believe he was the Son of God and decided he should be punished. It was a sad and difficult time, but Jesus knew this was part of God's big plan for the world. During Jesus' trial, Peter was outside in the courtyard. 3 times people asked Peter if he was a follower of Jesus, and 3 times Peter denied it, just as Jesus had said he would. When the rooster crowed the 3rd time, Peter remembered Jesus' words and wept bitterly. He felt sorry for not being braver. The next day, Jesus was crucified. It was a very sad day. His mother Mary and some of his disciples were there, their hearts breaking. But even in great pain, Jesus showed love. He looked at his mother and John and said, "Woman, here is your son," and to John, "Here is your mother." Even in his last moments, he was caring for those he loved. 3 days after Jesus was crucified, something amazing happened. Jesus rose from the dead. This was God's way of showing that Jesus was truly his son and that love and life are more powerful than anything, even death. He appeared to Mary Magdalene, who was so surprised and happy to see him. She ran to tell the disciples, who at first couldn't believe it. But when Jesus appeared to them, their sorrow turned to joy. Jesus was alive. Jesus appeared to his disciples and many others, proving that he was alive and teaching them that through him, everyone can have hope and a fresh start. Before Jesus went back to heaven, he gave his disciples a mission. Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. The disciples took this mission to heart. Filled with courage and the Holy Spirit, they went out to share Jesus' message of love and hope with the world. The Last Supper teaches us about love, faith, and hope. It shows us that even in the hardest times, we can find strength and comfort in Jesus' teachings. Jesus showed us the importance of serving others, the sadness of betrayal, and the joy of forgiveness. As we celebrate Easter, let's remember these lessons and the miraculous story of Jesus' resurrection.